Hello fellow builders, it's great to have you back for another video from our Let's Play series, Twisted Dunes, on the Oasis map. I'm your builder, New Build Cities, NBC for short, and in this episode I'm going to use selective zoning in an attempt to make generic industry look amazing. This is going to be a quick episode, so let's dive right in and see what we can do. And what I like to do is use a classic, the Statue of Industry, as the greeter for those who enter our industrial complex. So let's go ahead and create a square about that encapsulates the Statue of Industry. Let's go ahead and move the statue up a little bit more, just to give the industry a little bit larger area to live in. As I mentioned in the intro, what I'm going to do is be very selective in which industry buildings I grow from zoning the generic industry. And the goal of this build is to use that selective zoning to create a cohesive set of buildings that present themselves as an industrial complex that could be, say, owned by some kind of large corporation. And so what I'm going to do is create different areas. Kind of right when you enter into the complex, you'll see all this goods stored, getting ready for transport. So what I'm going to do in this area is be selective to try and get the 4x4 level 1 crate building, as well as a couple of the 2x4 level 1 and level 2 warehouse looking buildings. So I'm going to set that up right now. That looks pretty good. And what we'll do is in the back towards the railroad track, we'll have some parking and a lot of the large factories. Towards the left of the statue, we'll have some office, and towards the right, by the river, we'll have some utilities. To the left edge of the map, we'll have a cargo station. And then up a little bit to the right, where I'm going to zone this area here, Hickory Heights, will be a European district style level 1 and level 2 kind of like fueling area. So let's go ahead and run a few more roads just to get some shapes in here and kind of define those areas a little bit better. And keep in mind, we don't need a huge amount of industry in this city. I mean, right now we're sitting at 35,000 citizens, give or take, 50 million. And I think we've built, I don't know, maybe 4 tiles. And I imagine the city itself is probably going to get to, we'll say, anywhere between 80 and 100,000 citizens. There's not a huge amount of commercial that I've been zoning. And I don't plan on filling the city with a whole bunch of high-density commercial. There will be some, especially towards the downtown area, but not a huge amount. And we also have the industries DLC kind of running full bore, with most of the unique factories either at 150% output or pretty darn close to it. As well as we have a healthy amount of fishing with some fish factories. So we're getting goods that can be sold in our commercial area from the industries DLC and the fishing from Sunset Harbor, which means we don't need a huge amount of generic industry to kind of support our city in our commercial zones. I imagine this area here and maybe some select zoning in a few other spots is going to be enough. And of course we'll find out. Now I'm just using some of the different road types, the 4-lane, 6-lane, and the asymmetrical road, just to get some dedicated turn arrows to try and help diffuse the traffic. Because there's going to be a decent amount of traffic in here since it's going to be mostly industry, and industry has a lot of trucks. I'm going to try and control the traffic by once again kind of giving them dedicated lanes to force them either in one lane or the other to help spread the traffic out. And it's looking good so far. We put down our police, fire. We'll put a handful of services in here just to boost the land value up a little bit, as well as help level up the buildings. And like I mentioned before, this like weird spot, we're going to kind of put just different utilities, water, things like that, just to kind of give it a little bit more industrial feel. And it's looking pretty good so far. Now all we have left to do is some zoning. And voila! The power of editing. You didn't miss much. I was blowing up buildings, doing some detailing and stuff like that. And like I mentioned before, we have the Statue of Industry at the entryway to our industrial area. We got some airport fencing to bring some security, as well as to the left we have some office buildings. Now there is some office and industry buildings in here that kind of look like office buildings. And as I mentioned when we went over this in the beginning of the video, right as you enter into a storage area that's got a lot of these like crate buildings as well as warehouse buildings, and that came out really nice and it looks really good. To the right of that we have a few more like office-y buildings, and maybe they're buildings that help support some of the utilities that are just beyond that. So like some of the water assets, sewage processing buildings. We have some fueling type assets in there as well. Some of the storagey tank, kind of like water tank looking things and fuel tank looking buildings. So that looks pretty cool. And behind our water assets, we have the fueling area. It's got a lot of these fuel type buildings in it, as well as our European style buildings. Now keep in mind the European style buildings only exist as level 1 and level 2. And between kind of like the fueling area, like the parking lot, we have a couple of just assets in here. Recycle center, we actually have the sauna, as it looked industrial. We got radio towers and watch towers and barracks and maintenance building from our farming part of the Industries DLC. And between our storage and our factories, we have a nice quote-unquote green space, which is difficult because remember the pollution kills the trees, which is kind of frustrating. A couple chessboards from the city park from Parklight DLC, and then of course we have our main factory buildings kind of producing our goods, as well as some parking for the workers that work in this complex. In the corner here I have a little substation using the bathroom from the city park as like the control house, and the monorail track sunken down into the land as our bus work, and the earthquake detector as a transformer that goes into the airport cargo station. That looks pretty good. And then of course next to that we have some more kind of like storagey type stuff, some warehouse looking buildings and some of the crate buildings. Well, I think that wraps this one up. I hope this build demonstrates what a little patience and selective zoning can do to transform the generic industry into a beautifully looking industrial complex. I'm pretty happy how it turned out. The total build probably took a few hours, but once again, I bounced back between a couple different tasks while I was working on it. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please leave a like to help support and grow this channel, as well as I'd love to welcome you into the NBC family by having you become a subscriber. If you'd like to interact with me live, stop by my Twitch page, the link is below, and shoot me a follow. That way you'll be notified the next time I stream. I wish you the best and brightest success in your cities, and as always, happy building.